The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was the largest structure ever built by any species in known space. It floated in the void between three star systems, and it could hold representatives from over 1,000 different worlds. Today, only 37 species had sent their delegates, and the hall felt empty despite the importance of the meeting. Ambassador Daniel Price walked through the massive doors and felt the weight of every eye in the room turned toward him. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and deep lines around his eyes that came from years of smiling at people who did not deserve his kindness. Behind him walked his aide, Lieutenant Commander Sandra Cole, who carried a small case and wore an expression that revealed nothing. The human delegation had been given seats at the very back of the chamber. This was not an accident. The Galactic Concord had strict rules about where each species could sit, and humanity had been placed as far from the center of power as possible. Daniel walked past rows of alien delegates who watched him with expressions ranging from open contempt to mild curiosity. He kept his back straight and his face calm. The Valari delegate rose to speak. His name was High Counselor Morath, and he was considered one of the most powerful beings in the Concord. His scales shimmered with colors that shifted as he moved, and his neck frills spread wide to show his importance. The translator device rendered his words into flat English that stripped away whatever emotion might have been in his original speech. The Galactic Concord has considered the petition submitted by the human delegation, Morath said. The request for full membership status has been reviewed by committees representing all major species. The decision is unanimous. Daniel already knew what was coming. He had known for months. But he stood and listened because that was what diplomats did. Humanity is denied full membership, Morath continued. Your species lacks the cultural development required for participation in high-level decisions. Your technology, while occasionally clever, remains derivative of knowledge shared with you by superior civilizations. Your aggressive tendencies make you unsuitable for positions of authority. Sandra shifted beside Daniel, but he placed a gentle hand on her arm. Not yet. However, Morath said, and his tone suggested he believed he was being generous, the Concord recognizes the usefulness of human labor. Your species will continue in its current role as an observer member. You will contribute resources and personnel to Concord projects. You will serve on dangerous missions that other species prefer to avoid. In exchange, you will receive protection and guidance from those more qualified to lead. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates looked at Daniel with something like pity. Others seemed amused. A few appeared uncomfortable, as if they knew that what had just happened was wrong but lacked the courage to say. So, Daniel thought about the last 3 years. He thought about the human doctors who had developed a cure for a plague that was killing millions of Corvani children. The Concord had accepted the cure and then denied humanity any credit for creating it. He thought about the human engineers who had designed shields that saved an entire Valari colony from an asteroid impact. The Concord had classified those shields as Concord technology and forbidden humans from using them on their own ships, he thought. About the human soldiers who had died defending Concord. Space from pirates while Valari and Corvani warships stayed safely in dock. The Concord had called those deaths acceptable losses, 3 years of humanity proving itself. 3 years of giving everything and receiving nothing. 3 years of being told that they were not good enough and would never be good enough no matter what they achieved. Daniel looked at Sandra, and she gave him a small nod. They had prepared for this moment? They had hoped it would not come, but they had prepared. I see, Daniel said. His voice was calm and carried clearly through the chamber. Then humanity has nothing further to discuss with the Galactic Concord. Morath's neck frills fluttered with what might have been surprise. You misunderstand, Ambassador. This is not a negotiation. The decision has been made. You do not have the option to reject it. I am not rejecting anything, Daniel replied. I am simply informing the Concord that humanity is leaving. Silence. Complete and absolute silence. Even the environmental system seemed to pause. A Corvani delegate spoke up. He was a squat creature with 6 eyes that blinked independently of each other. Leaving? What do you mean leaving? Your colonies exist within Concord space. Your ships travel on Concord routes. You cannot simply leave? Daniel reached into the case that Sandra carried and removed a small device. He placed it on the table in front of him and activated it. A holographic display appeared showing Earth's solar system in perfect detail. 18 months ago, Daniel said, humanity completed construction of this. The display shifted to show a massive ring structure hidden in the shadow of Jupiter. It was enormous. It dwarfed the largest space stations the Concorde had ever built. And it was something that no species in the Concorde had ever successfully created. A gateway, Daniel continued. Fully functional? Tested and operational. It connects to a region of space beyond your charts, beyond your reach. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions and accusations. Some called him a liar. Others demanded to know how this was possible. The Villari had been trying to build gateway technology for 6,000 years and had never succeeded. Humanity had been in space for less than 3 centuries. Daniel waited for the noise to die down. When it did, he spoke again. In 72 hours, every human ship will pass through that gateway. Every human colony will be evacuated. Every piece of human technology will be removed from Concorde space. When we are done, there will be nothing left. No humans. No human knowledge, nothing. Mora's scales had gone pale. You cannot do this. The Concorde will not permit it. The Concorde, Daniel said quietly, has no choice. He gathered the device and returned it to the case. Sandra fell into step beside him as he walked toward the exit. The delegates watched in stunned silence. At the door, Daniel paused and turned back to face the chamber one last time. For 3 years, humanity has asked only for respect, for equality, for a seat at the table where decisions are made. You have denied us at every turn. You have taken our contributions and given us nothing in return. You have called us lesser and expected us to accept it. His eyes moved across the room, taking in every face. We do not accept it. We never accepted it. And now you will learn what it means to exist in a galaxy without humanity. He turned and walked through the doors. They closed behind him with a sound that echoed through the great hall like the ending of an age. In the chamber, the delegates sat frozen. The Villari and the Corvani and all the others, who had spent centuries building an empire on the assumption that they were superior to everyone else. They looked at each other, and for the first time in living memory, they had no idea what to do. The humans were leaving. And somehow that simple fact was more frightening than any war could ever be. The exodus began 12 hours after Ambassador Daniel Price walked out of the Galactic Concorde chamber. Across 100 different star systems, human beings stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. The message had reached every colony and every ship and every outpost. It was time to go home. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the carrier Endurance and watched his tactical display fill with thousands of moving dots. Each dot was a ship. Civilian transports loaded with families. Cargo haulers carrying everything that could be moved. Scientific vessels with research data that had taken decades to collect. Hospital ships. Construction vessels. Mining platforms that had detached from asteroids and were now flying under their own power, and among them moved the warships of Earth's defense fleet. They formed protective corridors through which the civilian ships traveled. They watched for threats, and they waited for trouble. Lieutenant Hannah Brooks sat at the tactical station, and her fingers moved constantly across her console. She was young, but she had proven herself in 3 engagements against pirates, and Marcus trusted her completely. All civilian convoys are on schedule, she reported. Colony 7 has completed evacuation. Colony 12 is at 80%. The outer settlements are loading the last transports now. Marcus nodded. The plan was working. 3 years of secret preparation were finally paying off. While the Concorde had been dismissing humanity as primitive and aggressive, the humans had been building ships in hidden shipyards. They had been stockpiling supplies in locations that no Concorde sensor had ever detected. They had been preparing for exactly this moment. "Contact," Hannah said suddenly. Her voice remained calm, but her shoulders tensed. 12 ships entering the sector. Valari military configuration. Cruiser class. Marcus had expected this. The Concorde would not simply let humanity walk away. They had grown too comfortable with human labor and human sacrifice. Losing their favorite servants would be inconvenient. Time to intercept? 20 minutes at current speed. Marcus turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel. Let them know we see them." The view screen flickered and a Valari commander appeared. His scales were dark with anger and his neck frills stood rigid. He wore the markings of a senior officer and he looked at Marcus with open contempt. "Human vessel," the commander said. "You are ordered to halt immediately." The Galactic. "Sea Concorde does not recognize your right to abandon your designated stations. All human ships will return to their assigned locations and await further instructions." Marcus leaned back in his chair and studied the Valari commander. He thought about all the times he had been forced to take orders from officers like this one. Officers who sent human crews into danger while keeping their own ships safe. Officers who took credit for human victories and blamed humans for any failures. Officers who looked at human beings and saw nothing but useful tools. "Commander," Marcus said, "I am going to explain something to you, and I need you to listen carefully. Every ship in this fleet is carrying human families, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, children who have never known any home except the colonies we built with our own hands." He paused to let that sink in. "We are not soldiers looking for a fight. We do not want violence. But if you fire on ships carrying our children, you will discover exactly why the Concorde always assigned humans to the dangerous missions." The Valari commander's frills twitched. "You dare threaten the Concorde? You are nothing but a minor species with delusions of importance. Stand down or face the consequences." Marcus looked at Hannah and gave her a small nod. "Show them." Hannah's fingers moved across her console. The tactical display shifted and broadcast directly to the Valari ship. It showed the Endurance in detail. It showed weapon systems that the Concorde had never seen. Missile batteries that could launch salvos capable of overwhelming any known defense. Energy weapons that drew power directly from the ship's reactor core. Shield generators that operated on principles the Valari had not yet discovered. The Valari commander stared at the display. His scales went pale. His frills dropped flat against his neck. "That is not possible," he whispered. "Your technology is supposed to be inferior. Our sensors show nothing like this." "Your sensors show what we wanted them to show," Marcus replied. "For 300 years humanity has been learning from the Concorde. We learned your science and your engineering and your tactics, and then we improved on all of it." He stood up from his chair and walked closer to the view screen. "This single carrier could destroy your entire squadron, not because we are aggressive, or primitive, or whatever other insults your people like to use, but because we are survivors. Because we learned a long time ago that the universe does not care about fairness or justice. It only respects strength." The Valari commander said nothing. His eyes moved between the tactical display and Marcus and back again. He was calculating odds and he did not like the numbers. "Let us pass," Marcus said. "Go back to the Concorde and tell them what you saw. Tell them that humanity is leaving and that anyone who tries to stop us will regret it." "That is not a threat, Commander. It is a simple statement of fact." The view screen went dark. On the tactical display, the 12 Valari cruisers slowed and then stopped. They held their position and watched as the human fleet continued toward the gateway. Hannah let out a long breath. "They are not pursuing. They are not stupid," Marcus said. "Arrogant, yes. Stupid, no." The hours passed slowly. More ships joined the fleet. More families escaped from colonies that had been their homes for generations. Some people cried as they watched familiar worlds shrink behind them. Others sat in silence and wondered what waited on the other side of the gateway. Marcus stayed on the bridge through all of it. He watched the tactical display and he counted ships and he waited for the moment when something would go wrong. But nothing did. The Concorde sent more ships to observe, but none of them attacked. They simply watched and recorded and reported back to their masters. Finally, the gateway came into view. It hung in space near Jupiter like a ring of captured starlight. It was beautiful and terrifying, and it represented everything that humanity had been working toward in secret. All ships are through except the rear guard, Hannah reported. We are the last ones. Marcus looked at the gateway one final time. On the other side was a new home. A place where humanity would build something better. A place where his children and their children would grow up free from the contempt of species who thought themselves superior. Take us through, he ordered. The Endurance moved forward. The gateway swallowed the ship in a flash of light. Behind them, the ring structure pulsed once and then collapsed into nothing. The technology that had created it erased every trace of its existence. Where the gateway had been, there was now only empty space and distant stars. The Concorde observers recorded everything. They sent their reports back to their governments with notes of confusion and growing unease. The humans were gone. Every single one of them. And they had left nothing behind, nothing except questions that had no answers and a silence that felt heavier than any sound. 6 months after the humans disappeared, the Galactic Concorde held an emergency session. The great hall that had once seemed so grand now felt cold and hollow. The delegates who gathered there did not wear expressions of superiority anymore. They looked tired and worried, and some of them looked afraid. High Arbiter Thiessen of the Valari called the meeting to order. He was the most powerful leader in the Concorde, and his word was law across 1,000 star systems. But today his voice lacked its usual strength, and his scales had lost their brilliant shine. We will hear reports on the current status of operations previously managed by human personnel, he announced. Each delegation will present their findings. The Corvani ambassador rose first. His name was Vetch, and he had 6 eyes that normally moved independently to watch everything around him. Today, all 6 eyes were focused downward, as if he could not bear to look at his fellow delegates. The mining operations in the Karask Nebula have ceased completely, Vetch said. Human crews maintain the extraction equipment. Our engineers have attempted to continue their work, but the machinery is failing. We do not understand how to repair it. He paused, and his voice grew quieter. We have lost 43% of our refined mineral output. The materials we need to build ships and stations and weapons are no longer available in sufficient quantities. At current rates, our reserves will be exhausted within 2 years, murmurs spread through the chamber. The Karask Nebula had been producing resources for centuries. It was supposed to be inexhaustible. A delegate from the Drith species rose next. She was an insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected the chamber lights like tiny mirrors. Her mandibles clicked as she spoke, and her translator rendered her words in a flat mechanical tone. The medical research station at Velar Prime has been abandoned, she reported. Human scientists were leading 7 critical projects, including treatments for Corvani, neural decay, and Valari reproductive complications. All research data was removed when the humans departed. Thiesen's frills twitched with agitation. Surely we can reconstruct their work. Our scientists observed their methods. High Arbiter, our scientists did not observe, they watched. The Drith delegates' compound eyes seemed to darken. There is a difference. The humans did not merely assist with these projects. They conceived them. They designed the experiments. They interpreted the results. Our people were present, but they did not understand what they were seeing. She sat down heavily as if the admission had cost her something. A small furry creature from a species called the Fenari spoke next. His translator gave his words a high-pitched quality that would have seemed comical under different circumstances. The human patrol vessels that guarded the outer shipping lanes have departed, he said. Pirate activity has increased by 300%. We have lost 11 cargo ships this month alone. Crews are refusing to travel without military escort, but our warships cannot cover all the routes that humans once protected. More reports followed. The water purification systems on colony worlds were breaking down because human technicians had maintained them. Communication networks were experiencing failures because human engineers had designed the protocols. Food production was declining because human agricultural specialists had developed the growing techniques. Everywhere the delegates looked, they found the same pattern. Humans had been doing the work that kept the Concord functioning. They had been solving problems that other species could not solve. They had been filling gaps that no one had noticed until they were gone, and the Concord had called them inferior. Thiessen listened to report after report, and with each one his scales grew paler. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. "Enough," he said. "I have heard enough." The chamber fell quiet. Every delegate watched the High Arbiter and waited for him to speak. "We made a mistake," Thiessen said slowly. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. "We underestimated the humans. We treated them as servants when they were in fact essential partners. This is clear now." A Valari counselor named Draven rose from his seat. He was younger than Thiessen, and his scales still held their color. He had been one of the loudest voices calling for humanity's petition to be denied. "With respect, High Arbiter, the humans deceived us. They hid their true capabilities. They pretended to be weak while secretly building technology that surpassed our own. They are the ones who acted in bad faith. Did they?" Thiessen turned to face Draven, and his eyes were cold. "Or did they simply stop sharing everything they knew because we gave them no reason to trust us?" Draven had no answer to that. A Corvani scientist named P.
Eric spoke from the back of the chamber. She was old even by Corvani standards, and her multiple eyes had grown cloudy with age. But her mind remained sharp, and her voice carried clearly. "I worked alongside human researchers for 40 years, she said. They shared ideas freely. They collaborated without demanding credit. They treated my people as equals, even when we did not extend the same courtesy to them." She paused, and her cloudy eyes seemed to look at something far away. "I asked a human colleague once why they were so generous. Do you know what she said? She said that knowledge grows when it is shared. She said that helping others makes everyone stronger, including the ones who give the help." The chamber was silent. "We had that," Perix continued. "We had partners who wanted nothing more than to stand beside us as equals. And we threw it away because we were too proud to admit that a young species might have something to teach us." Thiessen sat in his chair and stared at the empty seats where the human delegation had once sat. 6 months ago, Daniel Price had stood there and told them that humanity was leaving. 6 months ago, Thiessen had believed that the Concord would be better off without them. He had been wrong. But the mistakes of the past were not what troubled him most. What kept him awake at night was a different question. A question that grew heavier with each passing day. The humans had built gateway technology in secret. They had developed weapons that could destroy Valari cruisers. They had hidden their true capabilities for centuries while pretending to be the primitive species that the Concord believed them to be. What else had they hidden? What else were they capable of? And most importantly, what were they doing now beyond the reach of Concord sensors in that unknown region of space where no one could observe them? Thiessen did not know the answers. None of them did, and that uncertainty was more terrifying than any enemy fleet could ever be. The meeting ended without any resolutions. The delegates returned to their homeworlds carrying reports of failure and decline. They told their people that the situation was under control, but they did not believe it. Themselves, the galaxy had grown quiet. The humans were gone, and they had taken something with them that could not be measured or replaced. They had taken hope. 3 years had passed since. Humanity vanished through the gateway. The Galactic Concord had learned to survive without them, but survival was not the same as thriving. Mining output remained low. Medical research had stalled. The outer shipping lanes were still dangerous despite constant patrols, but the Concord had adapted. They told themselves that the worst was over. They told themselves that humanity had been a temporary inconvenience and nothing more. They told themselves that the galaxy would continue just as it always had. They were wrong. Commander Lyris, of Valari. Intelligence stood before the High Council in a secure chamber deep beneath the surface of the Valari homeworld. She was tall, even for her species, and her scales were the deep blue color that indicated high rank. Her eyes moved across the assembled leaders, and she saw fear hiding behind their carefully composed expressions. 3 months ago, our long-range sensor network detected an anomaly, she began. A brief energy signature at the edge of Concord space. Our analysts initially dismissed it as a natural phenomenon. Solar flare activity, or perhaps a distant supernova. She activated a display, and a star chart appeared showing the boundaries of Concord territory. We were wrong to dismiss it. Over the following weeks, we detected similar anomalies at 17 different locations, all of them positioned just beyond our standard sensor range, all of them appearing briefly and then vanishing. High Arbiter, Thiessen leaned forward in his seat. His scales had grown dull over the past 3 years, and his frills no longer stood as tall as they once did. The burden of leadership during the crisis had aged him visibly. What are you suggesting, Commander? I am not suggesting anything, High Arbiter. I am stating a fact. Lyris changed the display to show a pattern of dots arranged in a careful formation around Concord space. These are human vessels. Scout ships positioned to observe our territory from every angle. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded proof. Others insisted that it was impossible. Lyris waited for silence and then continued. If they were beyond our sensors, how did we detect them? That is the question you are all asking. The answer is simple. We detected them because they wanted us to detect them. She let that statement hang in the air. The energy signatures were deliberate, controlled bursts designed to be noticed by our equipment. The humans are not hiding from us. They are letting us know that they are there, that they are watching. A Corvani admiral named Sorvin spoke up. His 6 eyes blinked rapidly with agitation. To what purpose? If they wanted to attack, they would have done so already. Their technology clearly surpasses our own. I do not believe they intend to attack, Lyris replied. At least not yet. What they are doing is assessment. They are studying our military exercises. They are tracking our shipping routes. They are monitoring our communications. They are learning everything about us. They already know everything about us, Thiessen said quietly. They lived among us for 3 centuries. They knew what we allowed them to know, Lyris corrected. Now they are discovering what we tried to hide. She changed the display again. This time it showed a recording from a Drith scientific vessel. The ship was small and clearly damaged. Its engines were dark, and it drifted helplessly through empty space. 6 months ago, this vessel experienced a catastrophic engine failure during a deep space survey mission. The crew sent a distress signal, but the nearest Concord ship was 4 days away. They had enough air for 2 days. They prepared to die. The recording showed the view from the vessel's external cameras. Empty space. Distant stars. Nothing else. Then a ship appeared. It came out of nowhere, as if it had simply materialized from the void itself. It was human in design, but unlike any human vessel that Concord records contained. Sleek and elegant, and covered in symbols that no one recognized. It moved with a grace that seemed almost organic. The human ship matched velocity with the crippled Drith vessel. A hatch opened and repair drones emerged. They swarmed over the damaged engine, and within hours it was functioning again. Then the human ship departed. It made no communication. It responded to no hails. It simply finished its work and vanished back into the darkness. They saved the crew, Lyra said. 12 Drith scientists who would have died alone in the void. The humans saved them without being asked, without demanding anything in return, without even acknowledging that they had done it. The chamber was completely silent.
Why?
Thiessen asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. I do not know, High Arbiter. That is what frightens me. She deactivated the display and turned to face the council directly. For 3 years we have told ourselves that the humans left because they were angry, because we denied them what they wanted. We assumed that they would eventually return seeking revenge or demanding concessions. Her scales shifted to a darker shade. But they are not behaving like enemies. They are not raiding our ships or attacking our colonies. They are watching us struggle, and occasionally they intervene to help. Not often. Not predictably. Just enough to remind us that they are there. Admiral Sorvin shook his head. That makes no sense. If they wanted to help, they would offer assistance openly. If they wanted to harm us, they would attack. This behavior serves no logical purpose, unless the purpose is to demonstrate something, Lyris replied. To show us what they are capable of. To let us understand the difference between what we are and what they have become. She paused, and her next words were chosen carefully. We denied them a seat at our table because we believed they were beneath us. Now they sit in the darkness beyond our borders. They watch us fail at tasks they once completed easily. They see our ships attacked by pirates that their patrols once kept at bay. They observe our people dying from diseases that their doctors once treated. Her eyes met Theson's. And sometimes when they choose, and only when they choose, they reach out and save lives that we cannot save ourselves. Not because they need anything from us. Not because they want recognition. Simply because they can. Theson sat back in his chair. His frills lay completely flat against his neck, and his scales had gone pale. They're not showing us their strength, he said slowly. They are showing us our weakness, as High Arbiter. And the worst part is that we do not know what comes next. We do not know what they want. We do not know when they will reveal themselves. We only know that when they finally choose to speak with us again, it will be on their terms. The meeting ended shortly after. The delegates departed in silence. They returned to their ships and their homeworlds. Carrying the weight of knowledge that they could not share with their people, humanity had not forgotten them. Humanity was watching. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, the children of Earth were building something new, something that the Galactic Concord could not imagine, something that would change everything. 10 years had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Concord. 10 years of struggle and decline and quiet fear. 10 years of watching the darkness at the edge of known space and wondering what was coming then. On a morning that seemed no different from any other, a human ship appeared. It emerged from empty space at the border of Concord territory, and it broadcast a simple message on all frequencies. The message contained no threats and no demands. It simply announced that humanity wished to speak with the Galactic Concord and requested a meeting. High Arbiter Theson received the message personally. He read it 3 times before he believed it was real. Then he ordered his fastest ship prepared for departure. He was not the only one who came. Representatives from every major species traveled to meet the human vessel. The Valari sent their finest diplomats. The Corvani sent their most respected scientists. The Drith sent observers who would record everything for future generations. Even the small species like the Fenari sent delegates because everyone understood that this moment would shape the future of the galaxy. The human ship waited for them at the designated coordinates. It was beautiful in a way that made the Concord vessels look primitive by comparison. Its hull seemed to shimmer with colors that had no names. Its design was elegant and organic, as if it had been grown rather than built. Symbols covered its surface in patterns that no translator could interpret. Theson stared at it through the viewport of his ship and felt something he had not experienced in many years. He felt small. The delegations gathered in a conference chamber aboard a neutral station that had been hastily prepared for the meeting. They arranged themselves according to the old protocols, with the most powerful species closest to the center. Then they waited. The door opened, and a human woman entered. Her name was Catherine Shaw, and she was the ambassador of what humanity now called the Human Confederacy. She was not young. Gray streaked her dark hair, and lines marked her face in ways that spoke of difficult years. But she moved with confidence, and her eyes were clear and sharp. Behind her came two aides, who carried nothing and said nothing. They simply stood at her shoulders and watched. Catherine looked around the chamber, and took in the faces of the delegates who had gathered to meet her. Some of them she recognized from historical records. Others were strangers. But all of them wore the same expression, a mixture of hope and fear and desperate curiosity. She smiled, and the smile was warm, but it did not reach her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know this meeting was unexpected. Humanity has been silent for a long time. We had much to do and many things to build, but we always intended to return." Theson rose from his seat. He was old now, His scales had faded to a pale gray, and his frills barely moved when he spoke. But he was still the High Arbiter, and his voice still carried authority. Ambassador Shaw, on behalf of the Galactic Concord, I welcome you. We have many questions. I am sure you do. Catherine gestured for him to sit, and I will answer what I can. But first let me tell you why we are here. She walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display had been prepared. She activated it, and an image appeared showing a region of space that no Concord chart contained. This is humanity's new home. 17 colony worlds spread across a dozen star systems. Our population has grown to nearly 50 billion. Our technology has advanced beyond anything we possessed when we left Concord space. The display showed cities that seemed to float among the clouds, ships that moved faster than light without using any known method of propulsion, stations that orbited suns and harvested their energy directly. We have done well, Catherine continued. We have built something that our ancestors would be proud of, a civilization based on cooperation and equality and mutual respect. She paused, and her expression grew serious. But we did not come here to boast. We came here because isolation serves no one. There are threats in this galaxy that require cooperation to defeat. There are problems that no single species can solve alone. And despite everything that happened between us, we remember that the Concord helped humanity take its first steps into space. Thiessen leaned forward. What are you proposing? Partnership. Catherine met his eyes directly. The Human Confederacy is offering the Galactic Concord membership in our alliance network. Equal partnership. Shared technology. Mutual defense. Access to our medical advances and our engineering knowledge and our agricultural techniques. The chamber fell silent. The delegates looked at each other with expressions of disbelief. A Corvani ambassador named Vetch spoke up. His 6 eyes blinked rapidly as he processed what he had heard. You would have us join you? After we denied you membership in the Concord? After we treated your people as servants? We would have you beside us, Catherine corrected gently. Not above and not below. Beside, that is all we ever wanted. It is all we have ever wanted. She turned to address the entire chamber. 10 years ago, Ambassador Daniel Price stood in a room much like this one. He asked for respect and equality and a seat at the table where decisions were made. You refused him. You called humanity primitive and aggressive and unworthy. Her voice remained calm, but something in her tone made several delegates look away. We could have returned with warships. We could have demanded tribute or territory or submission. Our technology would allow us to take anything we wanted by force. She shook her head slowly. But that is not who we are. That is not who we want to be. Humanity left the Concord because we refused to accept a place beneath others. We will not now put ourselves above others. That would make us no better than the ones who hurt us. She gathered her materials and prepared to leave, just as Daniel Price had done so many years before. Take your time to consider our offer. Discuss it among yourselves. Debate its merits and its risks. We are patient now. We have learned that the galaxy moves slowly and that change often comes to those who wait. She walked to the door and paused with her hand on the frame. But do consider carefully. The silence of the past decade taught us many things. Chief among them is that we do not need you. The question you must now answer is whether you need us now. The door closed behind her. Thiessen sat in the quiet chamber and stared at the empty space where Catherine Shaw had stood. Around him, the delegates whispered to each other in voices filled with uncertainty. Through the viewport, he could see the human ship waiting in the darkness. It was beautiful and powerful and completely beyond his understanding. The galaxy had spent 10 years fearing what humanity might become. They had imagined revenge and conquest and destruction. They had never imagined this. They had never imagined forgiveness. And somehow that was more terrifying than any war could ever be, because it meant that humanity had grown beyond them in ways that had nothing to do with technology or weapons. They had grown in wisdom and compassion and strength of character. The Concord had tried to keep humanity small. Instead, they had made them great, and now the children of Earth returned to offer a hand to those who had once pushed them away. The only question that remained was whether the Concorde was wise enough to take it.